Bradley, it's not working. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Oh yes, I'm on now, that's good. Welcome to the afternoon panel session, which is actually the closing panel session for UC EXPO this year, looking at the future of unified communications. My name is Chris Middleton. I'm co-editor of ucinsight.com. I hope you can all hear me. It's a very crowded session today. Yes, thumbs up from the back. There's a lot of noise from there. Yes, lots of thumbs up. That's good. Thank you. I'm also a consulting editor for computing and editor of a magazine called The Strategist. I am thestrategist.com. Anyway, so we've got a very interesting panel today, which is made up of people from a lot of different sectors from unified communications, from the cloud industry, from infrastructure and networking, enterprise software. So there's a lot to talk about. And as it's such a big crowd this afternoon, what I'm going to do is just ask some initial questions, get everyone to introduce themselves, but also we'll open it up to the floor quite quickly, I think, so that people can ask questions directly. So if there's things that we're not covering or you really want to talk about or put on the agenda, please do put up your hands. We're scheduled for half an hour, but we can overrun a little if there's a lot of questions, and obviously you can always just come and grab people after. That's up to you. So I'll introduce the panel. To your left, yes, to my left and to yours as well. First of all, we have Giovanni Mezgec, who's General Manager, Product Marketing for Skype for Business. As we all know, Skype for Business was up until recently Link. Skype for Business launched very recently, April the 15th, I think it was.
We just released the software last week. So. Just
last week in the US, and they've been talking about it this week at UC EXPO. Next we have Olivier Colinet, who's Technical Director from Google. Lots of things to talk about there, I'm sure, and I'll get them all to introduce themselves in more detail in just a moment. Next we have Mclaughlin, who heads up the UK collaboration business for Cisco. Thanks for coming, Don. Next is, I'm reliably informed, Xavier Martin, I think I pronounced that correctly, who's Vice President Messaging and Communications from Alcatel-Lucent Enterprise. And finally, last but not least, we have Hickisch, who's Vice President Global Solution Marketing at Unify. Unify, as you may know, has recently launched its a new collaboration platform, Circuit, which I'm sure Jan will talk about. So, Giovanni, what's the key sort of directional movement for you and for your company over the next 5 years in unified communications? Sort of, what's the key
Microsoft
thing for you?
specifically?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think you've heard it. If you came to the keynote, you've heard it today. So I'll be quick. We just released Skype for Business. That's a new platform for us that basically takes the best of Link and the best of Skype from the enterprise and consumer and combines it into one. Then we're going to be building a lot on the cloud with Office 365, and particularly for hybrid cloud, and the ability for customers to use the cloud, but also decide where they want to deploy in their own data centers and for which functionality, so that you can have a really mix of different deployment scenarios and configurations to adapt to the enterprise.
Staying with you for a moment, Giovanni, it's fair to say that Microsoft owned the desktop space for many years. 97%, I think it was, of the desktop OS market, up until, fairly recently. It's fair to say, if you don't mind me saying so, Microsoft doesn't own the mobile space to the same degree. So how big a challenge is that for Microsoft specifically, in terms of the more mobile that unified communications is becoming?
Yeah, no, I think it's a totally fair. As a matter of fact, the 90% that you mentioned has changed quite dramatically if you count all mobile phones. I think the way, when you think about mobile and Microsoft, most people think about Nokia. And actually, I think mostly about Office and all the applications that we're porting. And I don't know if you've got to use Office on the iPad or on mobile phones, on iPhones and Android. It's actually quite good. And so you're saying that Microsoft is really taking a lot of apps into the mobile space. And for us, the idea is when we think about mobile, we think about a user moving through different devices rather than a phone or a mobile tablet. And so there's a slightly different approach to mobile that we have. And just in terms of, we know people use multiple devices. I have at least three different brands and operating systems. And what I want is basically my apps to work just the way I want it on all of them and be able to connect with all the information I want. That's what we're trying to do.
Okay, thank you. I'm actually going to go over to the opposite side of the stage this time. Jan, Unify, its circuit collaboration tool, which you may or may not be familiar with, is about putting everything under a single pane of glass. Is that right? So, so perhaps you could talk about why you think that is strategically important over the next few years, and in particular in relation to what Giovanni's just been talking about.
Yeah, so a lot of people were hearing us talking about a single pane of glass. In fact, this is more behind. This is about focusing on the people, putting the user, the end user, into the center, right? In former times, and I think this was one of the major faults of unified communications, creating a more dispersed, more separated world where people had to jump from applications to applications. We're now doing the opposite, bringing those things together, but again, putting the user into the center and let the people decide what they're going to use. Right, so it's instead of forcing or having technology forcing the people to do what they need to do, it's kind of allowing the people to do what they need to do and supporting them, enabling them by technology.
Strategically, for a unified communications specialist such as Unify, how big a switch around was that sort of for you as an organization to sort of go for a very different model, it sounds, from what you were just saying?
In fact, it's not just for Unify as an organization, it's in fact for the whole market. And I really, speaking for everybody sitting here, if we are not paying enough attention to that, putting the user into the center, the user is running away, is going with other suppliers, providing applications and enabling them with communication capabilities. And everybody sitting here is kind of at the back end. Right, so I think this is something what we, the industry, needs to realize. We have to put the user more into the focus, allow them how their brains and they are really working, and also incorporating what's going on in private life. There's no longer a distinction between private life and business life. Those things are coming together. We have to pay much more attention to that and serve our users.
Okay, that's a good opportunity actually to bring in Olivier from Google's perspective. Google is very much at that sort of fulcrum, if you like, between the consumer and business. How big an ask is it for an enterprise audience, for very much a business-focused audience, to, and I don't mean this in a pejorative way, to trust Google with becoming an enterprise play? People associate it very much with, with search, with apps on a consumer mobile, if there is any distinction anymore between consumer and business. So how big an ask is it for Google strategically to say, we want the enterprise business, you can trust us with that?
So I'm actually part of the Google for Work division, which original mission is really about bringing the Google technology to the enterprise world, and preserving this user experience at the same time, providing as well the controls and the administration which is expected in the enterprise. So we've been on this journey for the last 10 years. Google for Work today covers many different value propositions, from Google Apps, which is a suite of messaging and collaboration, towards Drive for Work, which really helps organizations tackling the file sharing, the storage in the cloud, as much as the real-time edition and collaboration paradigm. So we've been working for 10 years with small but also very large organizations. We've got today like G4S, which is one of the largest organizations on our side, with 600,000 employees benefiting from the cloud services. So over the last 10 years, obviously, we worked with many, many accounts, making sure we could provide all reassurance in terms of how Google is really managing the data of our customer, but also passing the data over from one data center to the others. And we decided to make it very clear from the upfront. So we're sharing today a data processing amendment to all of our customers, making it clear and contractual, how Google engages in preserving and managing the data of our customers, making it as well very clear that any service we may offer is contractually binded, so the customers know upfront how we're going to be using the information for only, in terms of only providing value to their users. There is no absolute correlation in between the advertising part of the business and the way we're serving our customers who are using our services in the space of or in the environment of our customers. What has been interesting for us is really basically by bringing these technologies to enterprise was a way for us to leverage the convenience and scalability, reliability of our infrastructure. So what we did at that time was really bring all the administration, the managing the green lights, managing the servers that a lot of CIOs used to be in organization, bringing them back to the business and really using IT as an enabler to the function and the business, bringing them back to where they could most value or impact the organization. And this really explains today why so many organizations have moved along these cloud services and benefit from that. What has been interesting for us in this journey is also understanding how we could mesh all these services onto one single platform. The way we see Google Apps today is really acting as a collaboration platform, which merges many different types of components. The reason is the way we, as organizations, need to work is constantly as a team. So we moved away from individual productivity to team productivity. Meaning by this, we're chatting with each other, we're sending emails with each other, we might decide to share documents with each other and eventually collaborate real time on these documents. And there might be time where we want to review all together by a quick meeting, how final could be this document, which means we may decide to bring everyone into a Hangout and bring unified communication into the play. That's how we see collaboration for us, a real-time collaboration. And the way we measure the benefits to the users is, how many touch points do we have across UDay and how can we best benefit to you? The benefits for us to not only serve the consumer space as much as the enterprise space is making sure we're preserving the user experience. Everything should be easily accessible. It should be a single click to access any of the services we offer. And this is why bridging the two together is also extremely important for us.
OK, thank you. Donald, collaboration is very much your focus at Cisco. Tell us about your role at Cisco in terms of, we don't tend to think of Cisco as being about collaborative tools. We think of it more in terms of sort of networking, infrastructure, etc. So perhaps, how important is collaboration now for Cisco, and how do you see the UC market developing over the next few years for yourself and just generally?
Sure. So, collaboration from our point of view is just anything that allows people to communicate and work better together. And that would include unified comms, it would include web conferencing, video, contact center. So it's quite a broad portfolio, but it's quite interesting to hear. We're hearing some consistent themes here. Everything we're doing is driven by the user experience. And I think that's really important. We're also trying to make it much more pervasive. So the idea is that collaboration needs to be for everyone. If organizations and governments are going to drive the real productivity potential out of using collaboration, then it needs to be available for everyone. And more than that, it needs to be a consistent experience across every device and every app. So we want to make sure that from every room, every desk, every pocket, and every app, people can get a consistently high quality experience and really drive some of the benefits. Because there's a really nice quote. There's a guy called William Gibson who was a scientist and fiction writer in the 60s. He was a guy that coined the term cyberspace. And he said that the future's already here. It's just not evenly distributed. And that's kind of the message we want to take, is that there's been some great collaboration tools for a long time, but typically they've been for a small subset of the community, and they've not been available to the same level of quality to everyone. So what we're trying to drive is that pervasive collaboration experience, and also tap into teamwork, which is, I think, one of the really interesting emerging areas. I think individuals have probably got to a level where they can't give an awful lot more at an individual level, but what we can do is we can make team working much more natural and have people work in the way that they would naturally work rather than be driven by the tools.
Xavier, you're VP Messaging Communications at Alcatel-Lucent Enterprise. You're the creator of the Alcatel-Lucent Dynamic Enterprise Vision, so I understand. So perhaps you can talk a bit about that. What is the vision for the enterprise from Alcatel-Lucent's perspective?
Yeah, so as far as UC is concerned, we think that we should get rid of the first phase of UC where the motto or the holy grail was just about to increase employee productivity. I don't know any company who wants to decrease employee productivity, but rather to stress on the two major benefits that UC should bring. First, it's to increase the enterprise performance. And second one is to deliver a user experience which is at the level of employees are expecting. So we need to get rid, in my opinion, and my vision for UC is really that we need to get rid of the discussions around technology. no one takes care of technology anymore as far as UC is concerned. For years, and starting with the ignition of IP telephony in the early 2000s, we have worked as vendors, and I'm pledging guilty for that, and probably my colleagues too. We have built a kind of Napoleon cake made of technology layers, increasing technology but not serving the end game nor the employees. Afterwards, we have witnessed the advent of smartphones and tablets, and we had to rethink UC because of that, because technology was not set or designed to support this BYOD phenomenon and these users coming with new tablets and smartphones with different operating systems. The vision now is that we're entering the third phase, where UC should be linked to the tangible benefits and outcomes it can bring to both enterprises and users. So the cloud is definitely the first step towards this objective, because it's triggering new financial models. But we do believe that's not enough. And in the future, in the near future, cloud should be used, or cloud architecture, or UC as a service, name it, should be used to trigger new financial models where we'll be, as vendors, capable of mixing new financial schemes under which we will put into the pictures the benefits that UC can bring to organizations. In other words, we need to be capable of measuring consumption, out of this measurement to extract patterns, to advise customers on what should be the features they should consider using. But in addition to that, we need to go further than just pay-as-you-go services, but to enter into financial schemes where we are charging customers based upon the financial and tangible outcome they are getting out of the UC services, against KPIs which have to be agreed before the UC system is used. Okay, thank you. Let's do a very quick show of hands to find out sort of the people in the audience today. How many of you, if you just put up your hands, if you would say that you have a strategic role within your organization, C-level, IT policy maker, IT director? Anyone here? Is that right? There's a few. Okay, quite a few. Maybe 20% or so, maybe 10. And how many of you would define your role as sort of more IT project head, project manager, sort of a team leader, that sort of level within the organization? Okay, that's interesting. The reason I ask is I wanted to put a general question to the panel in terms of where responsibility lies in this new model for unified communications. Because if more and more people are mixing and matching cloud services, for example, whether it's Google or from Microsoft, or using other sort of cloud tools themselves, there's the growth of shadow IT, as we know, in a great many organizations where people are simply doing this themselves independently away from the IT department. But if people are going entirely to the cloud, who is responsible for quality of service? Who is responsible for levels of service? And who's responsible for managing the whole experience for organizations? How big a problem is that, Giovanni, would you say, in the future, for the IT buyer, for the IT user?
So the question, I'm trying to understand the question is, who is responsible of the quality of service?
Is there a sort of a gap, if you like, in terms of who is responsible?
No, ultimately? I think obviously if you're using a cloud service, it's the vendor responsibility to be on the line to make sure that the service works and that it's reliable and then it can integrate. Of course, helping IT, always giving IT the choice, but really ultimately empowering users in any way we can. So that's how I would see it.
Olivier, a particularly important question for Google, I suspect. In terms of a lot of people, I imagine, do use Google services independently within the organization without going through the normal IT purchasing decision. Is that fair?
A lot, most of our customers come from a line of business asking, really to offer the best services to the users as a way to improve, obviously, productivity. So we've got a lot of interest from CEOs as much as line of business managers as we engage with collaboration platform discussions. But also, a lot of CIOs come to us because they want to change basically and bring their company to a much more agile platform where cloud services can really empower them. So, as of today, we probably have like a 40%, 60% of CIO engagement, really asking us to change the organization, make it agile, and by doing so, providing the right tools to the users. If I look internally at Google, Ben Fried, our CIO, came to unified communication because he wanted to make sure every single engineer across the world could connect with each other so we could have obviously higher team productivity across our whole organization. We've got 9,000 meeting rooms. So his intention wasn't just to power a few board meeting rooms to facilitate collaboration across a few others. His mission was making sure anyone could benefit from unified communication straight up. So these 9,000 meeting rooms that we have, they're all connected constantly to unified communication. Should you be at the office or should you not, we are leveraging the same technology to connect, which is Google Hangout. So this is, this is kind of a vision or the mission that we put for ourselves, either internally as CIO to the employees or externally, because we want to provide democratized access to all these services which can help millions of users. So back to your question, I'd say the role of the CIO is definitely to empower the users, and that should mean bringing the best tools to to the employees.
We talk a great deal about the technologies, but obviously collaboration particularly needs to be have a business strategy behind it. It's all very well creating collaborative tools for people, but if people don't really know what they want to collaborate about or how they're supposed to collaborate, there's a major cultural change within organizations that they have to undertake. Donald, do you think that's fair? That it has to be part of a business strategy?
Yeah, and I think it links back to your previous question. I think the CIO's role is fundamentally changing. The way we consume technology is changing in businesses in the same way as it is in our personal lives. So I think the CIO's role is changing fundamentally. I think they need to take much more ownership and leadership around driving cultural change within the business. I think we'll see a much bigger focus on user adoption. And the reason I say that is because the real benefits to organisation around using collaboration is about how people use it and how it benefits them. So I think we're going to see that subtle change. I think the CIO will play a key role in that, and perhaps the more consumable aspect of where technology is delivered will free up time for the CIO to take a greater leadership role in driving that. So as I say, from our point of view, everything is driven from the user experience rather than from technology, but clearly technology has got a great role to play in delivering that.
Okay, thank you. Before I bring in Xavier and Jan, just to say, if anyone wants to ask a question, there is a microphone in the audience. We can bring it to you. Sir, very quick hand up.
We'll get someone up first line.
Slightly quicker than I was expecting, but what the hell. So let's open it up to the floor. By all means, for everyone's benefit, by all means ask general questions of the whole panel, or feel free to ask specific questions to specific panel members. That's fine. So
across the panel, everyone has said that user experience is important, which in an enterprise context means that before the tools can be applied, someone needs to come in and understand what are the day-to-day tasks and how unified communications or the tools you provide can make those tasks easier, more seamless, and you choose the adjective that you like. Now, I would like to ask you how, beside your products and solutions, you develop your professional services capabilities to be able to actually identify those use cases where you say this is how you should use our products so that they are best fit to your environment.
Xavier?
Yeah, so once again, in the past, we have used professional services to open discussions with customers on the integration of business processes with unified communications. And I would say there is no rule, because the integration with business processes is different according to every single vertical you want to be willing to address. But once again, this is where the value of UC has been perceived in the past, where you were entering into discussions before what it is you want to do, what are the critical moments, part of your processes where you want to enable real-time communications. So you're reducing business latency, and you're seeing business latency as being an advantage out of UC. So it continues to be valid, and more we see that people, organizations want to link UC to their business processes, because just deploying UC for the sake of deploying UC is not enough. In the future, what you see, again, is that we'll be capable of capturing information from the UC usage into a store, a database, and we'll be capable of extracting afterwards patterns of use from the store. So we'll be the advisors, the business advisors of the customers, and will be another way to provide professional services to them to integrate with business processes.
I agree fully on you on the business processes, but I was thinking the use case I was thinking more about is we talked about shadow IT, we're talking about people using multiple communication platforms, and already CIOs knowing that, for example, by just looking at the URLs passing through the proxy, that people are using, I do not know, storage cloud service A, although they should be using the internal ones for. So I'm not thinking about the processes as you just described. I'm thinking about the situation where a business is today, where by just coming in and say afterwards, after you deploy it, we will figure out what we should propose to you, is a bit too late. So it's actually figuring out what the state is just right now, because people do use, I don't know, Dropbox and Box where they should use the internal system.
Maybe I will complement 1 minute and afterwards. So it's triggering two questions. First, what's the policy with regards to BYOD? Are you blocking forever, or are you being a bit loose with regards to the fact that people might bring their devices? But the real question it's opening is how do you link your network infrastructure policy to your UC strategies? Because it's triggering many questions with regards to unified access, wired, wireless, but also a network access control, where you decide, by that you decide what are the devices you're authorizing, what are the users, corporate or visitors, you're authorizing, and what are the applications you're authorizing, and which priority and resources. And this is why, and I have finished, this is why we do believe that you cannot address UC in the future without addressing the network infrastructure at the same time.
Yeah.
So what we have done in particular for Circuit, we were going through a really deep analysis work in regards to personas, in regards to customer needs groups. Those are, of course, referring to which industry you're in, what roles in the company you have, being interested in moving forward. And so allowing us to speak the right language, being able to address those use cases with you up front, so that we're not ending up being in a situation that we need to prove that the deployment was gone and everything is right, but that we are planning right at the beginning, provisioning the right people in the company in order to drive this. But I would also say there's another side to it. You might be in a company where you are actively driving this. There are other companies, customers out there, which are not that active and not taking the leading role, and there the lines of businesses are going forward and approach us, the vendors, in particular us, for Circuit on their own, which means there it is already too late. So in those cases, we are then proposing business transformation workshops being part of the Circuit deployment, including also managing of your experience, the customer and end user experience over the process of rolling out, because then, in that particular case, you're starting from an island and you need to expand it, getting the IT guys in the boat, not against you. Right? So this is very important, always understanding with whom you're talking to, and then come up with the right, well-suited use cases for the company.
I think we should take another question from the floor, so we're running a little short of time. Hands up, gentleman over there. Another one, I think, at the back in the corner. I'm sorry, sir, we'll come to you after.
Thank you. There was an article in Harvard Business Review last week which said that less than 40% of business social collaboration tools are even used frequently. And I just want the panel to comment on that. Is the low uptake of use of social collaboration and communication tools, and yet, and is it perhaps there's too much collaboration, too much focus on collaboration, less on business objectives?
Giovanni?
I didn't quite completely understand the question.
Is there too much focus on collaboration from a technical perspective and not enough on business objectives?
Well, the hope is all about making the user do what they want to do, which is, like we provide tools for users to do what people do and want to do and need to do for their work. So, obviously here it's a technology show. We talk a lot about technology, but fundamentally, I think you heard it from all of us, that users are the key and users need to do their job. And so, in terms of usage, in terms of helping with business processes, there's lots of things that you're hearing, but fundamentally, if we make somebody do their job better and more efficiently, if we help them in that process, if we learn from what they do and can help them do more and discover more from the system, then then we have done our job in terms of empowering an employee and an organizations to do what they need to do. So yeah, of course, but it's all about the user and getting them to do what they need to do at their job.
Donald, do you want to pick up on that? Collaboration is part of what you do, so.
Yeah, and that Harvard article kind of underpins what we said earlier on, which is we have to focus on user adoption. And some of that's a cultural change, right? And regardless of how good the tool is, it probably needs the organization to embrace a new way of approaching things. And when that's driven from the user outwards, it becomes much more natural and you're much more able to do that. But I think what we're also seeing is a focus on providing applications that just make everything else work better. And I think that's where we're seeing a lot of the development going.
Okay, there was a gentleman just by the middle speaker there who had a question, I think. Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Lots of people in this
Hello.
room would like to consume services from a number of suppliers, but the industry seems to be pushing ahead and creating services without really a strategic solution to where should they put their identities, the directories that support those identities, and the need to piggyback on old address spaces such as 25-year-old PSTN addresses.
Okay.
They might have a Twitter identity. They might have their identity in Active Directory, and many of the services represented by the panel today also encourage people to create directories within their own product offerings. Whereas the industry, it seems to be sort of dodging the bullet in terms of needs for new standards to create perhaps a new address space and directories to support identity.
Okay. Xavier, you want to pick that up, or does anyone else in the panel want to jump in?
Question is on the repository for identities and.
Yes, I believe so. Yeah. Is that the core of your question? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's back to my to my previous comment to the gentleman question. I think that we need to take care of user adoption. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we cannot anticipate which device and applications these users are going to use. So there is a real need for anticipating the user preferences and the user patterns, and it requires to have an open platform which is ready to host or to welcome these users, their devices, and the application. And part of this open platform, of course, you need to have the identity management, a single repository, which is really gathering or interfacing with a different system. Because like it or not, most of the customers we have at the moment are using Microsoft on the desktop, are using Alcatel-Lucent enterprise telephony, are using networking infrastructure either from Cisco or for Alcatel-Lucent, preferably from Alcatel-Lucent enterprise, if I may. But this is to say that we are no longer with customers which are sourcing with one vendor. And really the key, and it applies to the repository for identity management and for all the rest, is to provide an open platform, software-based, which can be installed either on premises or in the cloud. Some bits and parts will be elsewhere, because we are going to dig into Microsoft databases to get the user profiles when we're integrating and providing real-time capabilities. But I do agree this is absolutely critical. And once again, this is probably what will make a difference between a UC installation which is capable of anticipating user needs from a one which is still proprietary, meaning with no future.
Okay, Olivier.
If I can add a few comments to the question, I'd say we walk along two different directions to facilitate the use in enterprise of our initial services. The first is we make it very clear that it's two identities, one as a consumer and one as an employee. And it's up to you to use the same devices if you wish to, but very clearly which identity you're using. So you probably have seen the Lollipop announcement we made a few months ago. The great benefit of Lollipop is it really splits on your mobile device the usage you can make as an employee versus the usage you can make, potentially the same services as a consumer. So the first was making it clear to the users which identity they're using. We also worked very early on making sure we were using standards. So for whichever product you want to use on our side, cloud services, we can integrate it with a wide suite of single sign-on systems and directories which may suit your own requirements in the organization. So keeping it open, making sure that users know which identity they're using at the time has been some of the guidelines we've been using so far.
Okay.
I would like to add something to that.
Okay.
We are sitting here having a lot of fun here right now at the panel, but we're having a lot of fun competing with each other in the industry, right, with our customers. That's the one side. But another side, which is fairly not known because we're probably not speaking much about it, we are working closely together behind the scenes in industry-neutral consortiums like IMTC. So in a particular case, I would like to mention that I'm member of Unify is a member company. I think everybody else is as well a member of IMTC. And there we are talking together about especially those things where we need to get together. It's about integration, interworking with each other, right? So the companies are working together. They try to make it work for you so that you are not solving with your project teams, but that at the end we are really taking care in the background that our solutions are working together with each other. And it's not just reduced to the collaboration industry and communication industry. This goes much further. Your question is going to business applications and a lot of other applications. There are always identities, and they are, per definition, not matching with each other. So it's up to us to make this work, and therefore we are here in order to talk about it, how we are also working together in the background. Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions? Because we have an open-ended session, but if there are no further questions, then we can wind it up. But for goodness sake, if you're thinking, if only they talked about this, but they didn't address it, now's the opportunity to put that question forward. Anyone on this side? Any further questions? Amazing. That must be an incredibly happy audience. Then we've covered literally everything about the future. Somebody mistook me for Brian Ferry on the way here, so I don't have to sing Roxy Music songs. That's good. So thanks. If you put your hands together and thank the panel. Thank you very much.